Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome if you're new. I hope you're all doing well. And today we're here with my mid-year book freakout tag. As everyone keeps saying, I've watched so many of these videos so far this year and everyone kind of introduces this video as, oh my god, I cannot believe we're halfway through the year already. And neither can I. Like, holy moly, where is the year gone? But as of the day I'm recording this, I've currently read 51 books in 2021, which I don't think is too shabby, so we have a lot to delve into today. So yeah, let's just crack on straight into the video. The first question is, of course, what is the best book you've read so far this year? This one was kind of easy, kind of difficult to narrow down. I haven't read that many 5 stars this year, but I've read kind of 5 standout books that I constantly refer back to when people say, what are your favourite books you've read so far this year? But I have narrowed it down to one book because I am going to try not to repeat the same books for different questions. So I've narrowed it down to Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. If you've been following my channel since the beginning of the year, I read this back in like February, March time. Molly kindly gifted me this book from Mind of Molly, so thank you so much for gifting this to me, Molly. If it wasn't for you, I don't think I would have picked up this book as quickly as I did, but I fell head over heels in love with this book. I literally can't fault this book. This book was hands down one of the easiest 5 stars I've kind of ever rated, and I don't give out 5 stars easily. Like, you really have to have a perfect book for me to give you 5 stars. So the fact that this one was like easily off like 50 pages in, this is a 5 stars. It was just incredible. Like I said, the writing was perfection. I just adored the characters. I loved the story. I loved how this was a coming of age kind of discovering self-love story. Yes, you had a romantic relationship in this, but it was definitely more about self-discovery and learning that you don't always have to follow the path that your kind of past self set yourself on. So just because you did this degree or you did those topics in school, it doesn't mean that that is your life sorted. And I just loved the message in this book. If you didn't know, this book basically follows our main character, Grace Porter, and she's always grown up in the shadow of her military father. So like I've said, she's very much on a direct path and her whole life has been focused on astronomy. And she graduates all her education and goes on a girls' holiday to Las Vegas with her 2 best friends. And one night she wakes up completely drunk and she has married the girl that she just met. And my favourite character in this book is the love interest of Grace Porter. Like, the life lessons Yuki had were just incredible. I know they were like Morgan Rogers life lessons. The way she made Yuki kind of address them was just, I just felt like so many wounds on my own kind of like body were like healed by reading this book. I can't recommend it enough. And if you like a self-discovery, self-love type of book that has a kind of podcast involved, that has a little bit of travel because they go to Vegas, I highly recommend this book. And this is a sapphic relationship, so great LGBTQ rep as well. So yeah, this is definitely the best book I think I've read so far in 2021, but I have read some corkers as well. I think that's the first time I've ever used the word corkers. I did want to kind of honourable mention one book which is the best book I've read so far in 2021, but this was a reread, so therefore I can't class it as the best book I've read this year because I had read it last year. I just reread it this year, and that is Half a World Away by Mike Gale. I read it last year and gave it a mediocre 3 stars, and this year when I reread it I gave it a full whopping 5 stars, literally perfection. I cried my eyes out, so a little bit of a clue for one of the questions to come in this tag. But this book just broke me, and for that reason it kind of had to be mentioned as one of my favourite books of the year. And if it hadn't been a reread this year, it definitely would have kind of taken the place of Honey Girl, if that makes sense. This book basically follows our 2 main characters, Kerry and Noah, and they are half brother and sister, and they get teared apart at a very young age. Kerry has to try and take care of Noah when he's a tiny baby because their mother isn't kind of capable and she goes off drugs and all this sort of thing, and they kind of end up in care. But because Noah is a little baby, he gets adopted a lot quicker than Kerry, and Kerry ends up going through her entire childhood in foster care and in care home and in under the care of the government. And she really struggles, and she keeps writing letters to Noah across the years, and eventually they reunite, and it's just the most heartwarming story. Trigger warnings in here for a death of a character. I won't say whose character it is, but this is very much a heavy book, and this is the part that really got to me, so I definitely think it's a trigger warning, as well as cancer. So if those kind of 2 things don't merge very well together, I wouldn't recommend this book to you, because the way Mike Gales writes from the perspective of someone left behind is what really got me. So if you have experienced that, or still really raw from an experience like that, I don't recommend this book. But if you are capable of reading that with a little bit of tears here and there possibly, then I highly, highly recommend this book. It's definitely one of my favourite books of the year so far, but it is a reread. And now we're on to best sequel of the year so far. And this was the easiest question to answer because the best sequel I read so far this year is Heartstopper Volume 4, and this actually has to be my favourite Heartstopper volume so far to date. This was just pure perfection, but this was so heartwarming. I just kept squealing and just feeling so fuzzy and light inside. If you didn't kind of know what Heartstopper was about, and if you don't, you're living under a rock because everyone talks about this book. Whether you like contemporary or not, I feel like everyone loves this book. It's about our two main characters, Nick and Charlie. And Charlie has been outed in high school and Nick is still trying to discover their identity. Charlie then joins the rugby team on Nick's suggestion, and Friends turns into something more with the two of them, and you just kind of follow them and their group of friends, and the amount of diversity, the amount of lessons, it's just, Alice Oseman has a way with words and she writes all these topics in such an accessible way for younger readers, and I just absolutely adore this series. This one is my personal favourite because of how much more in depth we got into the characters, and especially the side characters. It's just, oh, it's so perfect. I love it so much. The next question is some of the new releases that you haven't got round to yet but really wish you had. And I have a couple here, so I'm going to reel off a few. And the first one is Dial A for Aunties by Jessie Q Santano, I think is the author's name. And I have been putting this book off because I picked it for my September's book club pick. If you didn't know, I am starting a book club. The first month is in July, so as you're just seeing this, you'll have time to join if you want to, but the book club is Books and Me, and we read a variety of contemporary and romance books spanning across fiction and non-fiction, and this is our September pick, so I've been holding off to read it, but everyone is reading it at the moment and it's getting me so excited. It's basically about our main character, name has blanked me, but she basically goes on a blind date and ends up killing him, so she enropes her mother and her aunties to help her cover the case. So it's kind of like a murder mystery romance. I'm so excited to read it, and I will definitely be reading it in September, so I cannot wait. Another one I'm really anticipating, which I haven't got around to yet, is Hazel Bligh and the Deep Blue Sea by Ashley Herring Blake. I love Ashley Herring Blake. I discovered her last year and she does incredible queer middle grade, and I fell in love with Ivy Aberdeen and Sunny St. James, so of course I'm anticipating Hazel Bligh. I don't know anything about it, but I'm anticipating it because I have loved her other two books that are middle grade. So yeah, this is definitely one I need to get to before the end of the year, preferably. Now we're on to the most anticipated releases I have left for the rest of 2021. So once again, I'm going to reel off a few. I can't narrow it down to one book per question. Like, how does anyone narrow it down to one book per question? So a few anticipated releases I'm anticipating for the rest of the year. The first one has to be the Queen herself, not only the Queen of the Jungle, but the Queen of Contemporary in my personal opinion, and that is Giovanna Fletcher. If you've been following my channel for a while, you know how obsessed I am with the Fletchers and how much I love G herself. And she has been working on a new book called Walking on Sunshine, and she actually lost all her words, and she literally went through like 2 weeks of trying to recover her book. She has thankfully recovered her book thanks to guys at Apple and iMac and stuff, but she literally documented the journey on her Instagram story, and I was so stressed because I've anticipated this release for so long. I feel like she hasn't released a book in a while. Her latest release was Some Kind of Wonderful, and this came out in 2017. So I've been waiting for a new G book for ever, it feels like, and I cannot wait to get to Walk on Sunshine. It basically follows three friends, Vicky, Zara and Mike, and they come to kind of a defining, in air quotes, defining point in their life, and they're just kind of like disappointed by it. They're like, is this it? Is this all my life has to offer? So they go on a kind of road trip together and discover what life is really about, and kind of have this life-changing moment, the three of them, and I cannot wait for this. I literally only just researched what this book was about because G is obviously an author by author for me, so I don't tend to look into her books, but I wanted to kind of let you guys know what this book was about, and literally reading the synopsis, I am 100 times more excited, if that is even possible. This book sounds right up my alley. If you know me, I love kind of self-discovery, middle-age books. Middle-aged books, definitely like 50-year-olds, but like late 20s, early 30s is like my favorite kind of age group to read about right now, because I am coming into like my mid-20s, and it's just so relatable compared to like YAs who are only like 16, 17, 18. I'm much more relatable now to the mid-20s to 30-year-olds. So reading books like this are just so relatable, and I literally cannot wait. G is one of my favorite authors, and the fact that she's like writing a book about kind of not a midlife crisis, but like a mid-20 to 30-year-old crisis about not seeing life as perfect, kind of expecting more from it because society have kind of put this pressure on you to have your life together by the time you're 30, is incredible, and I cannot wait to read it. One of my other most anticipated releases is another one of my favorite authors, Lindsay Kelk, and I met G, Lindsay and Paige Toon all together, so they literally became one of my my favorite like author trios, and I just love all of them so much. And Lindsay Kelk has another book out as well this year. They are both releasing the book on the same day, so I just feel like I need to book that day off work and just binge both of them together, because I cannot wait. Two of my favorite authors releasing books on the same freaking day, on the 11th of November of this year. That's gonna be a great day. That's gonna be a great day. And Lindsay Kelk's new book is called On a Night Like This, and it basically follows our main character Fran, who mysteriously accepts a temp job as a PA for a celebrity, and before she knows it, she gets swept off her feet onto a Mediterranean island for this really big kind of gala ball thing, and she doesn't realise it, but she ends up being centre of attention, and it changes her night, and it literally just leaves, like, the synopsis finishes on like a ... and I'm like so intrigued, so I cannot wait for this one as well. The last two I'm really anticipating is We're Not Broken by George M. Johnson. You heard that right, one of my favourite authors, George M. Johnson, who wrote All Boys Aren't Blue, aka one of my favourite books of all time, and my favourite book of last year, is coming out with another memoir. This one kind of focuses more on their childhood years and being brought up by their grandmother and being surrounded by their cousins at a really young age. So once again, I cannot wait for this one, and this is also another one of my book club picks, as well as Walking on Sunshine actually. So if you're interested in any of these books and you would like to read along with me and a group of other lovely people, then hit me up for the Discord link and you can join in on my book club. And finally, the last book I'm anticipating for the rest of the year is Good as Dead by Holly Jackson, which is the third book in the Good Girls Guide to Murder trilogy. I just need to know how the series wraps up. The first one is definitely still my favourite, but I still really enjoyed Good Girl Bad Blood, I think is the second book. And all I know is that the third one kind of follows Pip as she goes off to university at Cambridge. So I'm assuming there's going to be another like live current case and she has to solve that alongside her university studies. But I don't really know, I'm just anticipating it because I want to see how the series rounds up. Now we're on to a little bit of the tea when it comes to this tag, and that's the most disappointing book you've read so far this year. And I unfortunately have two that I thought I was actually going to rate 5 stars, hence why I'm so disappointed in them. And I'm just going to like rip the blaster off, get it all over and done with, and show you both, and then I'll talk about why they're disappointing. Beartown by Frederick Buckman and A Little Life by Hanya Yanakamura, like, both really disappointing, both 5-star predictions, both ended up being a very low 3 stars. Beartown, I love Frederick Buckman. I think he is a very talented writer. I love Anxious People and I love Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer. So I wanted to get to his backlist. It follows a town called Beartown. All they're known for is hockey, and they're kind of dwindling off society. They're not thriving, and they have this chance to come back and be this big name again because this really big hockey tournament, ice hockey tournament, comes into town and events happen from there. And I don't know, I love character-driven stories, but because all the characters spoke about in this book was hockey, and I don't care for hockey, I just found this book such a slog, and I just don't care for it. I'm really sorry, Frederick Buckman, but this book didn't do it for me. However, I am still intrigued about reading the rest of his backlist. The other disappointing read is A Little Life, and that is purely because, once again, being such a character-driven person and hearing about this book being focused on 4 main characters across their kind of entire lifespan from university up until old age, I was like, this is going to be the perfect book for me. But it just wasn't. There were like some redeeming aspects to this book. I didn't fully hate it, but it just didn't live up to the hype for me. Like, everyone loves this book and I just don't understand why. I think it was a writing style for me that really pulled me out of the story. I kind of never really knew who I was reading from the perspective of, because it does jump perspectives, and it just pulled me out of the story too much, and at the end I think the author was trying to be too kind of whimsical in her ending, and the last paragraph just went straight over my head, and yeah, I didn't enjoy it. If you want to know my full thoughts, then you can check out one of my weekly reading vlogs where I kind of read most of it in its entirety for more in-depth thoughts, as well as a live show me, Chloe from Chloe Reads Books, and Rhiannon from Welsh Reader all did, because we did this as a read along. So we have a whole 2.5-hour discussion about this book. If you are interested in any of our thoughts, then I definitely go recommend those 2 videos. I'll have them linked down below for you. But let's get the sadness out of the way. Let's go back to happy thoughts. Happy thoughts, guys. And with that, that's the biggest surprise of 2021 so far. And once again, I have 2 because it's clearly a trend. We'll start with this one. This is purely a major surprise to me because I had never really read a mystery thriller before, especially one where it was like a murder mystery and you had to solve a case. It wasn't really kind of on my radar of a genre that I would like to read. And I read it in like 2 days. I binged it. It was so compelling. I love Holly Jackson's writing. I love how she's able to make constant twists and turns, so you kind of never know what's going to happen, and then the end just hits you by surprise. I absolutely adored this book, and it's definitely a surprise to me just because I didn't really think this genre was for me, and clearly it is because I had a brilliant time reading it. Another one of my biggest surprises so far this year is Loveless by Alice Oseman, because if you know, I am not an Alice Oseman fan apart from Heartstopper. Heartstopper graphic novel series is one of my favourite things of all time. Like, it's one of my personality traits, I think, at this point. However, all of her other full written books, Born for This, Radio Silence, Solitaire, like any of her short kind of stories don't really like grasp me either. So I was really apprehensive about reading Loveless, and I was actually just dreading reading it. It was going to be the last Alice Oseman book I was going to give a chance to. And I read it and I fell in love with it. I loved this book. Like, this book, if you didn't know, follows Georgia, who is asexual, aromantic, and she doesn't discover this until she goes off to university at Durham. Everyone's had first kisses, everyone's like been in love at her age, and she hasn't had this, and she just thinks it's because she hasn't found the right person yet. And then she kind of starts to discover this pride society at this university, and she starts discovering her own sexuality, and I think it's a great coming of age story. And I have read Own Voices reviewers, and a lot of Own Voices say this is really good representation. So yeah, I just really highly recommend this book. I thought it was so well done. The next question is favourite new authors, so I'm just going to list off a few because I've spoken about their books already in this video. One is Holly Jackson because of Good Girl's Guide to Murder. A second favourite author this year is Mike Gale, who wrote Half a World Away. I have also read A Man I Think I Know by him as well, and I have a few more books on my radar by him, and he is easily becoming one of my favourite authors of all time. And my last favourite author so far this year is Morgan Rogers, just because of how whimsical she wrote Honey Girl, and it being one of my favourite books so far of this year. I am definitely anticipating more of her releases. Honey Girl is actually her debut, and I cannot understand how well she wrote her debut novel. Like, it didn't feel like a debut novel. It was absolutely incredible the way it was written, and therefore becoming one of my favourite authors definitely of this year so far is Morgan Rogers. We then have 2 questions that I always skip, and that is favourite character and favourite fictional crush. I don't get book crushes. Like, I think, oh, they're really cute, but none that I'm like crushing over. I'm just gonna skim over those 2 questions. I don't really like them. I would take them out of this tag if I had the power to. I guess I kind of do because I just skimmed over them, but you know what I mean. And then the next question is a book that made you cry, and I have already mentioned it, but this is the only book that has really made me cry this year, and that is Half a World Away by Mike Gale. Just because of the things I've already mentioned, this book really pulled at my heartstrings, really like got me attached emotionally, and I wasn't expecting it. So yeah, this is definitely a book that made me cry. I'll maybe insert a clip of me crying reading the ending here if I'm feeling brave enough. Enough of the sad tears, here's to the happy tears. What are some books that made you happy this year? And I can't not mention Heartstopper Volume 4. It's just, it warms my heart. I literally feel fuzzy inside when I read these, and I literally sit up in bed and I like squeal as I'm reading it. When I see all the like cute graphic novel like images and stuff, I'm just like, literally warms my heart from the inside out. I love Nick and Charlie to pieces. But just so we're not constantly repeating books, another book that has made me massively smile this year is Me, My Dad and the End of the Rainbow by Benjamin Dean. Another 5 stars and another one of my favourite books so far this year. Absolutely loved this book. If you didn't know, this book basically follows our main character Archie, whose parents have just got divorced and he doesn't really understand why. So when he finds a Pride flyer fall out of his dad's pocket, he thinks going to the end of the rainbow and going to Pride in London will kind of solve his family issues, and he meets an incredible cast of characters along the way. He has two best friends who are so supportive, and this was just the most wholesome middle grade possible, and I'm trying to shove this book into as many people's hands as possible. So if you haven't picked this book up yet and you think you might enjoy it, please make it a mission to read it before the end of 2021. It was so good, and maybe enough one of my new favourite authors, because Benjamin Dean did an excellent job and I will be picking up any more of his books that he writes in the future. Just as a little honourable mention, because I can't just pick one or two clearly, I like to pick 3 for each question. And that is my reread of I Heart Hollywood. I knew I loved this book and this series before I reread it this year, but this was the first time I read it physically. And I just have this whole new kind of level of love for this book and this series and these characters now, that this book has definitely made me happy. Like, look at all those tabs, and I wrote in it. I don't write in books. This is the first book I ever wrote in and I felt happy about it. That just kind of shows my excitement and my like happiness about this book and these characters. And this is the book that pulled me out of a slump at the beginning of the year, and I'm currently in the middle of I Heart Hollywood, the second book, because it's pulling me out of a slump for the second time this year. So I know in future, if I'm in a slump, rereading Angela's adventures will get me out of this slump, will put a smile on my face, and will reignite my love of reading. If you didn't know, this series follows our main character Angela, who, when she finds out her fiance is cheating at her at her own best friend's wedding, she ups and leaves her life in quaint England for a busy, chaotic life in New York City. She meets new men, she meets new best friends, she gets a dream job as a writer, and it's just about her adventures. And the second one follows her in Hollywood as she goes and interviews a famous celebrity, and the series just continues on from there. And this book isn't perfect, this series isn't perfect, but it's just so wholesome for me, and it just makes me love reading all over again every single time I read it. The next question is the most beautiful book you've got or were gifted this year, and I'm just going to point out 2. Both I kind of brought off my own money, but I have so many beautiful books on my shelves that were gifted to me this year, but I can't not for this question say Felix Ever After. Like, how stunning. It's beautiful. I gave this book a 4 stars. I read it in June, absolutely adored it. This is a YA book about our main character Felix, who is really comfortable in their own skin, being queer, black and transgender, but when he starts to get blackmailed with his dead name, he starts to look for revenge, and like a romance kind of blossoms from there. It's about self-growth and friendship, and it's just a really good YA. I've definitely been growing out of the YA genre this year, having read I think 54% adult and only 40-something% YA, and then the little sliver in between is middle grade. So I'm definitely branching more into the adult, and I'm scared now to read YA because it is for such a younger audience, I feel like, most of the time, but there are still some cracking YAs out there, and I definitely think this is one of them. The other kind of most beautiful book I brought this year was More to the Story by Henna Khan. Like, look how stunning this book is. It's just like, there's the detailing on the back and everything. I love the illustration of the 4 sisters. It's stunning. I love it so much. If you didn't know, because I feel like this book isn't raved about enough and I think you should all read it, this is a middle grade book about our main character Jamel, who is kind of like a really avid writer. She loves writing, she loves journalism, and she's part of the writing group at her school, and she's part of the newspaper club, and she writes articles for this club, but it's like about the school mascot, about school lunches, and she wants it to be something bigger. She wants to hit more important topics. But when her father has to leave home for 6 months to bring in money for her family across the seas, he spends 6 months away from home, she really starts to struggle, because that's how she bonds with her father, both of their love of journalism and writing. And then while her father is away, her sister also gets diagnosed with a serious illness. So it's about her trying to come to terms with all these life hurdles that are coming her way at such a young age, but also trying to like escape into writing. I think this is a really beautiful story, and I highly recommend anyone read it. It was just really cute, and I had to buy myself a physical copy because I did originally listen to the audiobook, which I also highly recommend. The audiobook was done really well as well. And now we're coming up to like the kind of last bookish question, and that is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And I'm just going to list off 3 that are really high on my radar currently, and one is Black Buck by Matteo Ascapour. I have been dying to read this book like since the second Rachel's Reading Rambles that I did in February. I'm so ashamed that I haven't read it yet because I was really anticipating this release. It hadn't kind of come out when I was looking for it, and I still haven't read it. This is why I'm really bad with new releases. I just don't read them quick enough. This book basically follows our main character. The name blanks me, but he starts as like a coffee barista at the bottom of a tower block, and the story is about him getting to the top of the tower block and becoming CEO of the company that kind of hires out the top levels. And I think it's a mix, as far as I'm aware, it's a mix between fiction and self-help, and I'm so intrigued. And that concept is kind of what grasped me from the beginning, and that's what kind of put that book on the radar for me, and I'm still so excited to read it. The other book I would love to get to before the end of 2021 is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This book was actually featured on the books I wish I got to in 2020 list, so I think it's about time I get round to it. If you want to see that video, I will link up above and down below. But I wanted to read this in 2020, but I never got around to it, so I'm really hoping I can get to it in 2021. You guys know what it's about, and it is a heavily trigger warning book, and that's why I haven't got around to it yet, because I'm just trying to wait until I'm in kind of the right mindset to read it. The last book I would love to get to is Just Last Night by, I cannot pronounce this author's name, and I always feel so bad, but this book has been on my radar for quite a few months now, and I just need to get around to reading it. Basically, it follows 4 main characters, all really close best friends, and one night their kind of whole life changes through this one event, and I just want to know what that one event is. I'm so intrigued, and it's one of Em's favourite books. I've just been made aware that she has stopped making videos, which makes me so sad, but at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for you and your own mental health. But she is still really active on her podcast, We're Spinning Plates, which is one of my favourite podcasts forever, and I still follow her on Goodreads, so I'm still going to be taking all her 5-star recommendations on board and reading them. So this is one of her 5 stars of this year, and I'm just going to love it as well because Em loves it. So Em, you're still going to be featured on this channel because I love you to pieces, but take time, be yourself, do what makes you happy, and I will always be there to support you. Just as a little shout out to Em, because I talk about her a lot on my channel, so yeah. And the last 2 questions I never heard as part of the mid-year book freakout tag before, but Caroline Johnson, another one of my favourite booktubers, did this tag, and I just watched her video, and she had these 2 questions at the end, and I thought they were really nice questions. So I'm just going to throw them in. I don't know if they're part of the official mid-year book freakout tag or whether they've just been added on throughout the years of everyone doing them. But the first question is, which video are you most proud of that you've made so far this year? The first one is my 24th birthday vlog. It's the first time I kind of vlogged in public and really kind of tried out the weekly vlogging, like just as like a lifestyle content creator, and I really enjoyed myself, and I'm so happy with how that kind of whole video came out, and I'm just glad that I have that captured forever now. And a kind of bookish video that I'm really proud of this year is my April TBR, where I played an Easter egg hunt with my boyfriend to pick my TBR. And I loved that video, and you guys loved it too, and I got so much love on that video, and it just makes me so happy that you guys love my like TBR party games. I always get so much love on them, but Easter egg hunt has definitely been my favourite one I've done to date. I definitely had to give a shout out to that one. If you haven't seen those 2 videos and you are interested, even though April's really far away, I still recommend, if I do say so myself, checking out that video because it was so much fun, and who doesn't love a bit of Easter egg hunting in July? You know what I mean? And the last one is favourite creators. I could sit here for another... I've been recording for 40 minutes. I could sit here for another 40 minutes and talk about all my favourite creators on BookTube at the minute, but I'm just going to list off a few. I'm really sorry if I don't mention you. It doesn't mean I don't love you. I love you to pieces. And the first one has to be one of my bookish best friends, Chloe from Chloe Reads Books. I love her content. I love just how organic she is, how easy all her videos are to watch. One of my favourite videos of hers to watch are her weekly reading vlogs. I think she's on number 37 now. Props to you, girl, for continuing for 37 weeks straight. I could not do that, so I praise you. You're absolutely smashing it, and you deserve every single subscriber. One of my other favorite content creators is Caroline Johnson, who I've just mentioned. She has the best book recommendations on BookTube, in my personal opinion. Thriller, horror, contemporary, mystery. She has it all. She reads a really, really wide range, and the way she just articulates her thoughts are just incredible, and I absolutely love them. And a couple more that are recent discoveries of mine is Kat reads a lot. Love her channel. Another kind of mystery contemporary reader, kind of my sort of thing as well. She reads a lot of similar books to me, as well as a lot more others, so I get a lot of recommendations from her. Absolutely love her content. Once again, she's so articulated with her thoughts. I feel like I lack so much when I come to talking about books, and all these other people like talk about them so well, and I'm just here being like, it was so good, read it, and they're all just like, all these like really crazy thoughts all come out just beautifully. Kat is one of those booktubers that I love and get so many good book recommendations from, so highly recommend. I'll have all these people linked down below for you so you can check them out easily. And the last person that I want to mention is Jonathan from Be Black and Loved. I discovered him last year, but I just absolutely love his content for when I need kind of more diverse book recommendations. He is a teacher and reads really, really good non-fiction recommendations most of the time, as well as some fiction here and there as well. And I just think because he's a teacher, it probably isn't because he's a teacher, he's probably really well spoken and then he's a teacher, but he just makes every book sound so interesting, even if it's non-fiction, and I think that's a talent in itself. So I highly recommend him, and he is actually a co-host of my book club for October, when we're going to be reading We Are Not Broken by George M. Johnson. So I cannot wait for October to come around and you guys can get to know him on a more personal level. So yeah, those are a tiny amount of my favorite current booktube content creators, but I love so many, and I love every single one of you who makes content. It's a challenge making constant booktube content, so I praise you all, because it takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of reading, and reading takes a lot of time. So sitting down and talking about books that you've read, it's not only just turning on the camera, it's reading the books beforehand, it's spending hours reading that book, writing reviews, thinking about your thoughts, and then sitting down and articulating them all in front of a camera for people to watch. It's a task, and it's a hefty task in itself, so I praise every single one of you who makes booktube content. You're all doing amazing, and keep up the good work and smash the last half of 2021. And with that being said, I've been recording for 45 minutes, holy moly. I'm gonna leave you guys here. Let me know in the comments what you've read this year. What are some of your favorite books? Have we read any of the same books? What are your thoughts on them? Let's just have a major chat in the comments, because I love you guys so much and I want to talk to you. So leave comments in the comment section below. Make sure to check out the description for the people I've mentioned in this video, as well as the books I've mentioned in this video as well. I'll try and link as many as I can down below. If you enjoyed this video and I haven't spoken too fast for you, make sure you give this video a massive thumbs up. Subscribe down below to see future content from me. I do anything from fun TBR games, weekly reading vlogs, book recommendations, and book hauls. I literally have every single bookish video your heart could desire on this channel, so make sure you subscribe so you never miss any more future content. And without further ado, I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys!